Good evening, everyone. We're going to start this meeting at 4:33 p.m. If we could please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Please place your right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, Mr. Domer.
Yes. Councilmember Johnson?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Crosby?
Here.
Councilmember Lau is in Hawaii. Councilmember Cashel-Fagita, we do expect shortly. Mayor Hepburn.
Present. Mr. Domer, we have the 2023-24 city budget. Is that correct tonight?
Correct, sir. This is the study session to go over that budget.
Ready
We all
to begin?
set?
Ready to begin?
Absolutely. So I'm going to bring up our finance director, Christy Lopez.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Today we are presenting a balanced budget and requesting some guidance on unfunded department requests. I would first like to thank the finance staff who have worked day and night, seriously, sometimes 2 o'clock in the morning, to prepare this. And we all get paid, so I understand that, but they go above and beyond, so I appreciate that. They have exhibited professionalism and dedication, and I truly appreciate it. I would also like to thank my fellow department heads and their staff for their patience, assistance, and hard work in helping us analyze and prepare their budgets. So, today we're going to go over a review of the budget, so a high-level overview of the budget. And then all of the departments are going to discuss their individual budgets, and then we will talk about council recommendations. So staff is presenting, as I mentioned, a balanced budget of $47.5 million. This is requesting some additional direction from council using the preferred budget scenario from the budget study session that we had. There are $107,000 of excess reserves and $125,000 from Measure LV that have not been programmed. And there are unfunded operational requests of $467,000 and unfunded capital outlay requests of $509,000, totaling $976,000. This is the total, and as we go through the budget, each of the departments will identify their unfunded areas. Just a note, originally when the budget was presented to council, this number was $1.2 million, and departments have gone through, reviewed their requests, and have looked to see what they could reduce for various reasons. Maybe it's they had savings this year so they can expend them in this year. Or maybe they've identified that they can hold off for a couple years and get additional use out of the existing equipment that they have. But they will discuss that. And then at the end, we will get some direction from council on your priorities for these additional funds. So these are the sources. This is all the revenues for the general fund. And we are going to focus on the general fund as that is what you have more discretion over as opposed to the special revenue funds, which have restrictions. And so as you can see, we have a 5% total increase over fiscal year 22-23. And that does include a 21% increase in charges for services, and that is related to $350,000 increase in insurance billings for paramedic, $175,000 increase in business fire inspection fees, $60,000 in police special duty, and $500,000 in refuse. In addition, we have a 2% decrease of sales tax for $134,000. Generally, we do see a 3% increase in sales tax, but due to the economic slowdown, we are anticipating that that is going to be flat. There is a $550,000 decrease, which is 38% from prior year for building permits, also based on economic activity, and 4% increase in utility users tax, which normally we see about a 2 to 3% increase. So part of the reason that the general fund is able to fund the $47 million that we are funding right now is because of Measure LV. Measure LV was passed in March of 2020 by the residents to fund the annual salary increases, which would be Tier 1 expenses, and additional program service enhancements, which would be Tier 2. The Measure LV Oversight Committee met the beginning of May and are in support of the estimated Tier 1 and the $125,000 Tier 2. They did want council to give direction on how to spend that $125,000, which is why it's currently unprogrammed. Just a note, we are anticipating at the end of June 2024, there will be a $10.4 million fund balance reserve. However, as has been discussed in previous meetings, we are anticipating that there will be a period of time where our expenses exceed those revenues, and so we do want to be very conservative with how we spend those. Tier 1 estimates are using historical increases, but they have not been included in these figures as we do not know what they are. So this was a estimate. The committee was in support of continuing how we have used them in the past, but we still don't know what those increases will be. So on to general fund expenditures. So the overall increase for general fund expenditures is 4%. One area that I would like to point out, as it is has a large impact, is our unfunded liability, or UAL, has decreased 98%, which is huge. The citywide expenses for UAL were $886,000 in 22-23. This year it is $17,000. So CalPERS provides us with basically they give us a bill and they tell us you owe this amount of money for unfunded liability. When that bill came, it was $17,000. That bill those numbers are based on last year. So they all are always a year behind. So we are anticipating, as they have changed their discount rate, that number is going to increase. Prior to, or when the council decided to do the POB, they also implemented a 115 trust, so a stabilization fund so that they could pay those future UAL, not knowing what it was going to be. So as of April 2023, that fund does have $4.2 million in there. So we do have a healthy amount of funds that could fund those UAL increases in the future. There's also time periods that are established in that policy, which, for example, $0 to $2 million of unfunded liability is supposed to be paid off between 1 to 5 years. So with that $4 million, we do currently have sufficient funds to cover up to $4 million if the UAL does rise next year. But that is a big reason as to why that increase is not larger. The salary increase is a 6% increase, and the ad pays, which include education and special assignment pay, was a 12% increase over the budgeted amounts last year. So this is and there's a lot of information on this slide. This presentation will be available after, so you can look at it. But the general fund operational expenditures, this looks at fiscal year 2021 through fiscal year 23-24 and looks at what those changes are throughout those years. So from 22-23 to 23-24, our operational expenditures are increasing 16%. As you can see, in prior years, they did not increase at that rate. The year before, it was 10%, and the year before that, it was 1.3%. The large driver of this is inflation, and also one of the increases was in the contract maintenance, and that increased, I believe it was almost $1 million. Part of that is we did have to take out a service contract for the sports park maintenance because it had gone to its life, and so we had to rebid that contract based on the direction that we've gotten and our current purchasing policy. And so that was a 60% increase in the contract price. We are anticipating, as additional contracts are going to also need to be rebid, that we are going to see those same increases in the future. Our general fund reserve balances, we are estimating at the beginning of July of 2023, or the end of this fiscal year, we will have $12 million in a fund balance. And we are anticipating at the end of this 23-24, we will have 12.1. That is including the reserves that you have not yet programmed. So if you decide to program them, then that will change. Okay. So ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act, was very beneficial to the city, and it provided a one-time influx of funds, and this will probably never happen again, which we don't want the pandemic back, so that's good. So the original amount that was received by the city was $7.6 million. There is a requirement that all of these funds need to be committed by 2024, and all of our funds have been committed. So in the recent report that was submitted to the federal government, everything is committed. However, everything is not expended. So currently, we have expended $2.6 million, and there is still committed amount that is unspent of $5 million.
How soon will that be spent? If they were talking about clawing the money back.
Right, so that's part of the reason you wanted to commit those funds. So they are committed, and they had to be committed by December of 2024. So we have committed our funds. They have to be spent by December of 2026, or that we have to give them back. So.
That's the new negotiation that was just passed as far as the budget deal. Again, Christy, using these ARPA funds, I understand that the federal government has made some changes and they want to try to claw that money back. And I know that we've designated where those funds are going, but with that latest agreement, are we in risk of losing those funds that have already been designated?
We are not, as far as I understand, because they are committed. So that was the key word I believe they used, was uncommitted, and these have been committed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And my understanding of what they did with the debt ceiling deal is more on the student aid and some other programs that weren't the direct allocation to the cities. So we do believe, but if there's anything that we find out, we'll be certain to rush anything through. So.
Thank you. One thing I do want to point out is when council originally decided how to use these funds, the final rule had not been released by the federal government. And so there were different areas and programs that you had to utilize those funds, and they had restrictions on how they could be spent. So before that final rule was issued, we had to do a calculation of our revenue losses. And when we did that calculation, based on a very complicated worksheet that we had to complete, it came out to about $2.6 million of revenue losses. Once that final rule was put into place, you could recognize up to $10 million of revenue loss without having to do a calculation. So when council first decided to use these funds, they had to first identify that 2.6, which could really be spent on any governmental purposes. However you saw fit, government uses. The rest of it did have to fall into their different programs, which is why we had the outdoor recreation and business assistance and the different areas, capital improvements for water. So with the final rule, there is a possibility to identify that possibly these funds, if you choose to, the allocation could be changed. So this is the authorized, we're going to go now into, and there's only a couple slides, but into the city overall, including the enterprise funds, special revenue funds. So this is the authorized full-time positions across all funds, and it shows that in 1920 we had full-time bodies, so this is not including part-time. We had full-time bodies of 168. The proposed budget for 23-24 is 191. In 2020, when Measure LV was passed, that shifted some of the weight off of the general fund. The Measure LV is also general fund. However, it has those two tiers that they focus on. And so with Measure LV, it freed up some money to spend on additional bodies, which services are what the city provides, and services are provided by people. So that is how we provide services to the residents. And so as you can see, we have had an increase in those personnel throughout the years. So this next slide again looks at all funds. These are the sources and uses for the general fund. As you can see, that's in the bottom, where you can see that there's 47.6 and 47.6 roughly for sources and uses. As you can see, there is a variance between the sources and the uses. That is because CIP funds or enterprise funds, they do have available fund balances that maybe they build up those fund balance for a project. And so although your sources do not match your uses, there is available fund balance to meet all of the needs. And now I'm going to pass it over to JR, who is going to talk about admin.
Good evening. Thank you to City Manager Domer for his support during this process, and especially want to call out finance's assistance in helping new city manager, new finance director. So the process has been a little bit different for department heads, but hopefully you've seen the benefit of that already with the different level of detail that we have. I will be providing an overview of budget cost centers: 1,000 for City Council, 1,200 for City Clerk, 1,300 for City Manager, 1,500 for IT, 1,600 for non-departmental, and 1,700 for City Attorney. In general, our budget requests for these cost centers are pretty similar to in past years. There are some areas that I will be highlighting throughout the presentation. One of the larger impacts of these specific budget cost centers is the election that would be happening in March of 2024. The estimated total cost would range from $200,000 with the at-large mayor ballot to $80,000 for limiting the election to the 2 district council seats. With the at-large mayor, this is broken down further with the cost to the county of $160,000 and then an anticipated $40,000 in additional staff support and city support for the election. With the 2-district seat only, it would be $50,000 to the county and then $30,000 for staff and city support for the election is what we're anticipating. In regard to subscriptions, we've actually talked about this the last couple years during the budget process. The city maintains around 100 different subscriptions for various things, ranging from like Microsoft Office 365 to support our daily functions in the office, to Civic Plus for our website, to things like ComNet for our police radios. As a collective, these subscription costs are increasing over $100,000 for this next fiscal year based on established agreements that are already in place with those vendors. This coming fiscal year, staff is requesting to utilize designated ARPA funds for improving council meeting capabilities, both virtually and in person. This will include ADA-assisted listening capabilities, new TV monitors for the audience so they're not having to stretch their necks to the right the entire time, new council monitors, sound system upgrades, things of that nature that will make our council meetings flow a little bit smoother and be a little more enhanced for the public. Lastly, I wanted to touch on that recruitment and employee development needs continue to be a significant impact to the human resources team. For example, our annual recruitment levels have more than doubled in the last 10 years. I point this out because the city added staff last year to help with that workload. It's been very successful, but staff is also requesting an upgrade to some positions to recognize the increasing technical and professional level of work being performed by using reductions from other areas, so not necessarily a cost increase to the overall budget. Under the City Council Budget Section 1000, there is a noted change in discontinuing the communication services contract for social media and public outreach. These duties have transitioned to internal staff and is also why a part-time position is being elevated to full-time by using the recognized savings. To staff's credit, there has been a significant improvement in this area of our outreach based on look, frequency, and creativeness that's happening there. So I wanted to call out our staff that's handling those issues. They've done a great job so far and looking forward to everything that they're going to work on in the next year. Under the city clerk section, the higher anticipated election costs of $200,000 related to the at-large mayor ballot question is included pending formal council action on the matter, which that's anticipated in August. As noted earlier, subscription services, still on this one. As noted earlier, subscription services have increased over $100,000. This is in addition to some newly added public safety specific subscriptions that were not included in the fiscal year 22-23 budget based on an error during last year's budget process. Another item to note is that a previously approved IT support position is being exchanged for increased specialized contract services. This modification of services will better serve the city's needs and provide for better cybersecurity and more technical expertise in some of the, especially the public safety areas that require that additional level of expertise. Under the non-departmental budget section, funds dedicated to support the Friends of the 4th of July Committee have been included for $15,000. I've talked about some of the personnel changes in the previous slides, but this just shows that the part-time administrative clerk position is being upgraded to a full-time administrative analyst position, and then the removal of that information systems tech position that I noted. This is a section that talks about some of the unfunded areas or unfunded requests that have been made. For my areas, this all lies in the IT sections. Staff has made an effort to sharpen our pencils and be creative. You see those items in blue at the bottom. Those are items that we originally had asked for but have removed. They've been removed because Christy talked about this a little bit, that we've either found the ability to postpone that item to another fiscal year, or we've been creative with our consultant and found other ways to patch that hole, if you will, or fix that area or address that area. Going from the top to the bottom in the black font, those are in order of priority that we've worked with our IT consultant, our IT staff, in identifying those are the top areas in order that we would like council to take a look at tonight. As part of formulating our budget request, staff and the consultant completed a cybersecurity and operations assessment. These areas were identified as deficient and need to be addressed to provide adequate security and operational ability for the city. It's talking specifically about the computers. Last year, council may remember, for the first time, we actually added a line item for new computers. So this is just continuing that practice. We're going to come back to you every year and ask for computers. It's just the nature of the beast. We've gone through with our consultant and identified this number of computers need to be replaced based on warranty expiration, system operation ability, those different types of things. So we've identified those are computers that do need to be replaced, and it could be a security issue if they're not. That's why we've identified that as our top priority. For the switches, we are needing to upgrade our switches as our current ones are outdated and support a slower infrastructure. With many devices needing to connect to the network, desktops, laptops, desk phones, printers, etc., our network is getting heavily congested, which, using the outdated switch, slows down the data communications between the server and the desktops. Moving over to an updated 10 gigabyte switch will help alleviate bottlenecks in the internal network and increase performance. It will also benefit our internet performance for our cloud applications, which are becoming more and more common, our data backups, our communications, and our streaming capabilities. At the same time, the requested switches have additional ports available for future expansion of devices. The battery backup system, we originally had asked for $26,000 for that item, and that would cover a complete replacement of that. But in working with staff, we're asking $6,000 to basically be a bridge for the time being. The battery backup system acts as a backup generator that supplies electricity to the public safety building's IT infrastructure equipment, including servers, workstations, monitors, etc., which is crucial for 24/7 operations, obviously. The $6,000 will be a bridge, and I'll talk a little bit about where that full replacement could come into place later on. For the wireless access points, we've changed our firewall to a Palo Alto system. All of our current wireless access points are the older Fortinet models, which are difficult to program, and they're very limited in their use compared to upgrading to a new version. The Palo Alto wireless access points are simpler to use, scalable, and more secure. The newer system will transform the city's ability to program and update settings and are designed to work seamlessly with each other on top of providing enhanced network security. Similar to the complete battery backup system replacement, the command post upgrades along with the public safety conference room update, while needed, could be addressed with assistance from our local legislative representatives. We've submitted a couple different appropriations requests that are still moving, and so we're hopeful that those will be successful, and that's why those items are rated a little bit lower on this list, but they're obviously a lot higher in that appropriations list, and we've gotten some general support. It's just the timing with that information is delayed, but so that's why we're kind of keeping them on the list for now, but understand that the council has several other requests that they have to consider.
JR, how are we as far as security and ransomware type of issues?
Yeah, so part of our assessment was a whole assessment. That's why the priorities that you see there are that way and in that order, is because that our holes that we have now would be addressed significantly with those additions of newer computers, with getting the new switches, switching over to basically why you see at the bottom we had asked for another Palo Alto firewall specific to City Hall, but in working with our consultant, we're able to utilize what we already have through PD and public safety and working through that firewall. So those are some of the different things that we're looking at. But yes, we've prioritized and done an assessment of our cybersecurity. Ken's actually a big proponent of looking at that type of stuff, and why we did kind of a wholesale look. Paid a little extra money this last fiscal year to take a really in-depth look at that. This concludes my budget presentation. I'm happy to answer any other questions that council might have.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if we could maybe after each presentation by the department, let the next department go, and then at the end, if there's questions, unless there's a one-off question or something like that, but just to keep the continuity and flow going.
Agreed. Thank you.
Hello again. Mine will be quick. I promise. A lot quicker than the last one. So, no problem.
Next, please.
So I am a little partial to finance. However, I do think that, finance is very critical. We provide tracking for all revenues, all expenses across the entire organization. So with that, here's our expenditure summary. There is an increase in personnel as we added a senior accountant in 22-23. However, when that was added, we did not need the appropriations, so we are now adding that. There's a decrease in the operational expenses due to a reduction in consulting services. As we did have staffing challenges last year, we had to bring on some consulting services for finance, so we no longer need that. The personnel summary, again, we had that senior accountant that we added. It's still currently unfilled. We are recruiting for it. And then we had an accountant that was added with the result of the fiduciary activities with HIDA. And for our unfunded summary, we were requesting some office furniture, as we do have a new body coming on board, hopefully soon. But we were able to fund that with 22-23 savings, as we have had a vacancy of an account clerk for about 3 months. So we are using those savings to pay for those needed equipment. And that is all of mine.
Take notes. Thank you.
So now I'll pass it off to Eric.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'm happy to present this year's community development's budget. I'm going to quickly go over some of the projects that we anticipate in the next fiscal year. We do anticipate the completion of our multi-year update to our city's general plan to be completed hopefully in the 6 months or so into the new fiscal year. This is on the heels of our housing element being updated or certified last year, as well as new ordinances on the SB 9 and ADUs, as the council's aware of. We also anticipate planning review of significant mixed-use projects in the Old Town area, consistent with the specific plan. We are continuing to process the housing rehabilitation program, as previously mentioned, using those ARPA dollars. We anticipate to be able to assist 50 homes. It's going a little slower than we had hoped, but the 50 units are in process, and those dollars are basically committed as previously identified. We have 3 residential projects that we anticipate to be completed next year, if not maybe right on the cusp of next year. Amherst Street will be next year for sure. Fruit Street will be next year, 100% complete. Walnut Street is expected to be completed late this month, so that might actually fall into this year or might trickle into next year. Those are 8 affordable units, as the council may recall. We anticipate the construction of a new industrial building on Palomares Avenue next year, as well as the completion of a building currently under construction on White Avenue, 2 new industrial buildings. In conjunction with Public Works, City Engineer's Office, we anticipate the 100% completion of the design work for the planned pedestrian bridge and other public improvements outlined in the Old Town Lumberton specific plan, and also consistent with the Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District. So while the design work will be done for this bridge, the funding for the actual construction still remains a target of the city staff. So with the city manager's office, we continue to try to identify dollars. More information will be provided on that update to the council at a future meeting, but we do anticipate the design work and have fully construction plans completed probably early part of next year. Lastly, staff through the city manager's coordination has been working on establishing a new community facility district, CFD, which would apply to all new development in the city to help support the public safety needs that those type of developments require. We currently have 2 different CFDs in the city today. They're outdated and maybe not quite what we need, we've identified. So we will be working with a consultant, more information to follow back to the council on establishing a new community facility district. But that would help us to shore up some of the public safety costs that these larger developments are expected to have on our community. So one of the differences that's happening to our department new this year, a little bit of reorganization where code enforcement will be moving from the police department to community development. So we do have some personnel modifications with the body moving over from PD to community development, as well as some proposed internal promotional opportunities for current staff. So we are looking at an increase of 1 position in our department. You'll see on the next slide. But that makes up the difference between the current year and proposed fiscal year for personnel costs. The operational cost usually always comes down to expected building activity. As you previously heard, 38% decrease in building activity is anticipated. That's primarily because last year was a little bit elevated than normal. I would say that upcoming year's anticipated building permit activity is pretty standard with a common year. I would anticipate that in coming years, we'll see it elevate back up again once these higher density projects that are being reviewed in the next year will be pulling permits probably in the following year or later. So this year is more of a standard year, while previously we'd had some above average years, if you will. But so that it shows as a decrease in expenditures and operation for the cost of providing those services to those projects.
Back on your personnel increase, we will see a decrease in police.
Basically, the equivalent. It's a wash, correct, on that position, yes. So here are the personnel changes. So again, this shows the one increase in a position, but with some internal promotions, there's some one part-time to a full-time position, as well as 2 promotions just to different titles, which make up the financial difference, as you saw in the previous slide. That the code compliance officer would be that new additional body. Similar to the finance, we had also requested some office furniture upgrades. Those were listed on the unfunded summary, but staff, in coordinating with finance, because we share kind of the same area where these furniture is going to go, we are able to find savings in our department's current year budget to be able to pay for those upgrades to desks primarily. And that completes my presentation.
Ken, didn't you have an extra desk?
Don't you have one in your garage, Steve? Thank you, Director Scheer.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and City Council, singular, not plural. I appreciate the opportunity to present the results of the Fire Department's highly analytical budget methodology. First and foremost, I'd like to highlight and thank our Senior Management Analyst, Jennifer Brown, for her passion to do right by the community and the department's mission, and to our Finance Liaison Accountant, Isabella Guzman, and Finance Director, Christy Lopez, for their patience and assistance through this tedious process. As we navigated the budget process, it was critical to systematically analyze each line item to ensure we were not unnecessarily budgeting where we didn't need to. However, as is the case each fiscal year, it's imperative to make sure we strategically project for the upcoming operational needs of the next year, while also continually striving to improve the identified deficiencies of LVFD. Unfortunately, we enter fiscal year 23-24 amidst extraordinarily high inflation. Consequently, we are also seeing those impacts on our day-to-day supplies and equipment, as those increases are evident here in our line item requests this year. As promised, this past fiscal year, the adjustment of our cost recovery mechanisms and fees are providing more accurate cost recovery, and as such, we continue to anticipate revenue growth. We are seeing increased EMS responses through our auto aid agreement, increases in per transport reimbursement for Medicare patients, increases in fire and safety inspection and permitting, and anticipate the activation of our emergency incident cost recovery this next fiscal year as well. Upon my appointment in late 2021, I was tasked with identifying and rectifying numerous operational changes. Those changes needed to be financially and logistically feasible, but most importantly, sustainable. My methodology included analyzing inefficiencies, capturing lost revenue growth, providing equity to the community and area partners, then implementing broad-scale administrative changes to increase staffing per the data-derived results of the standards of cover and community risk analysis. The result was a low-cost and efficient ambulance operator program, which has proven almost entirely self-sufficient. By reopening Station 3, we provided full response equity throughout the city and equitable assistance to our surrounding partners. That in turn provided a path to new auto aid agreement while we awaited the 2022 standards of cover and community risk community risk analysis recommendation for risk-driven service delivery improvement. Redeployment changes have not increased firefighter staffing to date. However, it is my intent and request to provide one additional firefighter engine 2 during this next fiscal year. The addition is objectively recommended by standards of cover recommendation and ensures a full NFPA 1710-17 firefighter response to fires and other complex incidents, regardless of daily staffing of assisting agency apparatus. Additionally, our local EMS governing agency is seeking to implement innovative methods of service delivery, which includes a flex staffing model, meaning on lower acuity advanced life support transport to the hospital with 4 personnel, we can keep our fire engine in service with 3 personnel until the 4th firefighter returns. We will then be prepared for this more efficient change and able to address response increases, which were anticipated in the 2022 community risk analysis. This, I believe, is the final necessary addition to LVFD's deployment. As was always the plan, our overall increase in revenues was intended to be sustainable fashion in which we achieved LVFD's much-needed change. Outside of this request, full-time staffing as we approach fiscal year 23-24 will remain consistent with 50 full-time personnel. 35 firefighters, which includes myself and my deputy fire chief, 1 analyst, 1 fire marshal, and 1 community risk reduction specialist. At this time, I'd like to bring up the Fire Department's Senior Management Analyst, Jennifer Brown, to go over our line item budget changes.
Good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. As Chief Nig mentioned, when we were putting together the budget this year, Chief and I are both we're finishing our first full fiscal year. So we finally had the time to actually sit down and look at this budget, and we wanted to make sure we were giving an accurate portrayal of where funds are actually being spent. So you'll see that many of our requests are actually they are operational requests, not new individual items, rather routine needs for pre-existing budget line items. We are passing along some inflationary costs from our vendors and suppliers. I'll go through some of the divisions where we are requesting increases. In our administration division, we did, in our admin area, we did do a recent remodel. We have office chairs that have been around for majority of the decade, are falling apart, and this would be the last piece for our admin remodel to be complete. Our Fire Explorer program is actually one of our most requested services. I run the social media for the department, and that is something that I get messaged for extremely often. Moving on to operations and training, our cell telephone budget, that's actually based on actuals. We are noticing that actually went over, and for some reason that needs to be adjusted. We also have the small tools. Actually, so that $25,000 right there, that was shifted completely from contract maintenance. Again, that's something that we identified was not being spent in the correct place, so we moved that over. And then also mandated turnout replacement. We've got personnel that are needing turnouts that have been in place for 10 years, and that is the time that is regulation for them to be replaced. Moving on to station maintenance. We've got building fixtures. We have stairwell modification in Station 1 that needs addressing, and then along with access control with all 3 stations. As JR mentioned, the conference room renovation, we would be handling both the furniture and the actual painting and renovation of that area. And then, again, these smaller ones are really just adjustments for us to make sure that we're reflecting costs in the right area. Community risk reduction, we're very excited that we have a fully staffed community risk reduction division. However, that division does require public education and engagement tools. So we do have asks there for our specific tools that we would like to go into the community. And, well, oh, thank you. Apologies. We want to take these tools into the community and increase our participation in events, increase our public education. Paramedic operations is a small line item that we're actually passing on just for our increased costs. And then in our apparatus and vehicle replacement, we have a new engine that was previously previously purchased in 22-23. It'll be delivered in 23-24 and will require outfitting for department standardization. Along with that, we've got our radio supplies and the small tools, which was another shift from a different line item. With that concludes our fire department presentation. Thank you.
You have a question?
Question, Chief, though.
Sure.
On page 29, it says the 3 firefighters, $412,000 to fund 3 requested, not included in budget figures. That's not included in the unfunded summary. So is it my understanding that with the unfunded summary of 362, a 412 should be added to that?
Correct. Any indication of what the fire department's budget would be at this point in any of the other documents are not reflective of the 412,000.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Chief, just a simple question. Our EOC, that's still upstairs in Station 1, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you, Chief.
Sure. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members, City staff. I'd also like to give thanks to Christy and her team, Jesus especially, who was a huge help during this process. As you guys know, Chief Flores was absent during the process, but she allowed me to announce that she hopes to return come July. She won't give me an exact date, but understandably. I also want to thank our department staff, who was also pivotal in this process, but a lot of the heavy lifting was from Acting Captain Jason Prowse, who was there, so thank you to him as well. All right. The 2023-2024 annual budget was assembled with the community in mind by ensuring it met and aligned with the city's mission statement and strategic values of maintaining efficient municipal services and maintaining the quality of life by being responsive to the needs of the community. The department's fiscal responsibility includes a firm succession plan for its future. The strategy ensures that our personnel attend current training that meets legislative needs and exposes employees to varying collateral assignments and administrative functions. The expenses associated with public safety, recruitment, homeless outreach, community engagement, and training are all supported through its annual budget. This expenditure summary here, as you see on the very top, our personnel indicates a decrease. Excuse me. Indicates a decrease. So today we present to you a status quo with some changes that I will discuss in a moment. The 1% decrease is attributable to the estimated accruals that was mentioned earlier by Christy with the transfer of mid-year UALs. This was geared towards personnel off on injury requiring backfill and overtime. The decrease also includes the transfer of code enforcement, as indicated earlier by Director Shearer. There's also the 1% also in that total. There's a decrease in variant accounts. However, the largest is attributed to the UAL described by Christy with the mid-year transfer. In operations, we're seeing a almost 5% increase, primarily driven by inflationary pressures across various expenses. The department awaits the results of the matrix personnel study to drive any future requests appropriately. We expect that study to be done sometime in July. That would help us determine personnel changes and operational changes. There is a note there for operational totals at the bottom for the 6.4% increase. Also excludes asset forfeiture, which Christy alluded to also, but that total excludes that amount there total. It's important to note that. In the personnel study, you'll see that the 62, we're going from 63 to 62. Again, that number indicates the transfer of code enforcement to the code compliance officer to City Hall. We do not add any additional full-time personnel to that, again, due to the fact that we are awaiting the matrix study results. However, we are requesting 2 additional part-time cadets to support operational needs in patrol and in administration. The cadets enhance department recruitment efforts, as oftentimes they become our full-time employees. They understand our culture. They've been doing it part-time for either a year to 2 years, and they're the best to recruit from. The cost of adding 2 cadets can be absorbed through O&P revenues. There are also additional personnel requests. We've actually upgraded our crime in our crime prevention. The community service officer will be upgraded to police community services supervisor to that salary, as mentioned, who now supports our social media program. And in traffic, that's where the 2 police cadets are being requested for a net body change of 2 part-time. There we go. And lastly, in the unfunded summary here, I'm going to kind of take it in 2 parts, with the unfunded operations on the left and the unfunded capital outlay on the right. Initially, the department made over $100,000 in unfunded requests, as displayed in order of importance, similar to the others. The $14,200 is to address operational maintenance, which I'll talk about first on the left. I first talk about the items in blue. It should be noted that those are removed and are not depicted in the totals. Additionally, the unfunded capital outlay requests are also eligible for tax measure Tier 2 for your consideration. Back to item 101, 2503 communication headsets. Those were purchased this fiscal year utilizing savings from our department photo, which I'll also describe here momentarily. The very next item is uniform safety equipment. That was increased by $2,000, and this is due to increases in uniform costs and equipments to include bulletproof vests. The next item there is the Very Auto software. This software provides several layer benefits to the department's digital infrastructure. We are very familiar with the surrounding agencies that have fallen victim to hackers disabling their CAD and RMS systems. Very Auto provides an additional layer of protection and accountability, providing vital information to pinpoint access points of potential threats by monitoring department computer by its end users. The tool provides a redundant level of security for our department's network. The next item there is our retirement service awards. This year we are anticipating 3 retirements. The $2,200, the funding, which is the request of $2,200, meets the city's administrative regulations surrounding service awards for retirees. We did not have any, we didn't have an amount there previous, and now we are anticipating 3 retirements, thus meeting that request. The next item there is the department photo. We had requested $3,000 to take a department photo, and as I mentioned, we had anticipated having Chief Flores in that photo. Of course, she fell ill, so we postponed it, and we're simply asking to take that photo this next fiscal year. Those photos are utilized for historical purposes and as displays when honoring department staff. Again, this request is identical funding to cover the cost of the department photo. The next item on the top, which is our dispatch chairs, I listed it as very important. These chairs are used 24/7, 365 days. These chairs are just consistently rotated. Most of the chairs are repaired throughout the year, expanding their lifetime. However, eventually they require replacement, and they are now due for replacement. And the $10,000 will give us 4 chairs out of the 6 that we have. We do replace them quite frequent, and they are due for replacement. We're going to move down to the 7 SWAT rifles. We made this request 5 years ago. The department made a similar request to replace the aging rifles. Since then, our SWAT team has gone through an analysis from the California Tactical Officers Association, and in their analysis, they recommended replacement. As mentioned, the rifles are 20 years old, and it is recommended to replace them based on round count and age. All 7 of the rifles have reached their replacement age. These rifles are for specific use and are designed specifically for our tactical team. And the department understands its fiscal situation, and if needed, can reduce the total to 4 and wait to replace the remaining 3 the next fiscal year, which would obviously change that cost from about $18,000 to about $11,000 if able. The next item there is the 40 millimeter launchers. The department's less lethal option of using a Remington 870 to expel a beanbag projectile has been available for over 30 years. Many agencies have transitioned to a 40 millimeter launcher due to its accuracy and the ability to expel varying less lethal projectiles to be used by officers when confronting combative but unarmed subjects when de-escalation is no longer an option. The beanbag rounds have a degree of liability concerns due to their square projectile design at certain distances. When expelled through the Remington 870 at certain distances, they act like a curveball and at times strike an unintended part of the body, creating that liability aspect I just described. The 40 millimeter launcher is a far superior tool, reducing liability and providing our officers with a platform that addresses the liability and accuracy concerns. The department seeks to remove all 13 beanbags from each of the vehicles and replace them with launchers. At this time, we're asking for 7 launchers, which is depicted there as well. And then the next item there is the tethered drone. The department's use of drones has proven to be a valuable resource. The technology deployed with each drone provides officers with an aerial view similar to that of a helicopter at a fraction of the cost. A tethered drone allows the department to deploy a drone for extended periods of time without having to worry about exchanging batteries. A recent use of an untethered drone allowed officers to monitor a large perimeter when searching for a wanted person. During a recent council meeting, when we had a perimeter, a drone was used then, but it had to be brought back due to battery concerns. And as mentioned, a tethered drone can be deployed during various city events, including parades, to monitor progress or respond to calls from a specific area and provide real-time information to ground-level officers, giving them information on how to respond appropriately to each call. The next item is our police station cameras. The department's perimeter cameras have reached their end of life. Many no longer operate as intended. The cameras provide the department and employees with a layer of security when leaving at night to our unsecured parking lot. But it is important to note that the department was recently awarded a technology grant to upgrade its digital infrastructure, which includes cameras at intersections and our digital communication between the cameras directing that information to our station. Once we receive that information, it's still yet to determine, and Captain Prowse is working on that information to see if those grants would be possible to utilize to update our cameras as well, if there's sufficient funding to cover that. The second to last item there is a Loki ground robot. The department had a 20-year-old robot that was returned to the military due to it no longer being operable and way too expensive to fix. Robots are used for various reasons to provide officers with a safeguard when deployed, and they can be utilized to communicate in varying situations. Robots can be used to search a building when conventional means to search pose a significant risk to officers or the assailant. The department's membership and regionalization with the foothill cities allow agencies to share resources and equipment during emergencies. The success of a tactical team relies heavily on equipment that enhances its technical capabilities. The addition of a robot would be in addition to the team's resources to achieve peaceful resolutions. And the very last piece there, I promise that this is it, is the night vision. The team's current night vision equipment is over 15 years old and failing. This piece of equipment would be outfitted on our police sniper rifle. That enhances the sniper's team ability to work in complete darkness, enhancing their tactical capabilities, adding a layer of safety during their deployment. The team's equipment, previous equipment was obtained through the military, and the availability of the equipment from the program remains competitive. At this time, the department does not own night vision. It has borrowed equipment from Glendora and Monrovia departments, which, as I mentioned, are no longer operable. Again, as I mentioned, in blue and some of the items on the right, it's important to note that the mentioned requests are eligible for consideration of the LV tax measure Tier 2. Lastly, understanding the fiscal responsibility before you today, we feel that by highlighting personnel costs, operational equipment needs, the importance of maintaining current staffing levels pending the results of the staffing study, and the request for 2 additional police cadets allow the department to meet the emerging needs, to provide the best service to our residents. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions? Thank you.
Honorable Mayor and Council, tonight I present to you the Community Services Department budget. The Community Services Department provides a wide variety of services for children, senior citizens, and adults, which contribute to the overall well-being of individuals in the community. In addition, the department manages 4 facilities, including the Laverne Community Center, Aquatic Center, Oak Mesa Preschool, and Veterans Hall. These facilities offer a wide selection of classes, programs, and events and rental options. So some of the new programs that are included in our department that are funded through special revenue this year are the homeless or the unhoused and an inclusion grant. The unhoused, we work along with the police department in regards to outreach and services. There is not a line item in the general fund, but we do have access to funds through the San Gabriel Valley COG, Tri-City, and PLHA funds. Because the city has their housing development, one of the few cities in the area, we will have access to about $142,000 this next fiscal year. With that money, we will use it to secure additional beds at Hope for Home, and we also use it for Lakota for an additional day of service here in the city. The inclusion grant through our regional center and through the state is actually a very exciting grant because we are the first city to offer private swim lessons for those with special needs. Most cities offer recreational group lessons. This is very unique because it's a one-on-one experience. This also will provide training for our staff that include the rec leaders, aquatic staff, and the preschool teachers on how to deal with families and those children with special needs. So it's very exciting this year. Here we have our expenditure summary. Shifted operational with personnel to cover costs as we reclassified all the aquatic center personnel to meet the current market value. Overall, we are at a negative 0.8% as a department. With this, the school district offers TK. So we offer preschool. So in order for us to kind of stay current and provide these programs, we provided the first time ever Parent and Me preschool. I will tell you we had a wait list the entire fiscal year. It's been very successful. We are going to continue to offer that as well, but just wanted to let you know it's an amazing program that has done, our teachers are amazing because they literally just went with my idea and they excelled in it. The other thing is we are fully staffed at the Aquatic Center. All the other aquatic centers, including San Dimas, they're not fully staffed. We have a great relationship with the high school, with the water polo team, swim team, so those are most of my employees. But with reclassifying those positions, it helped us tremendously because right now LA County and other cities are hurting for aquatic employees. The other thing is facility rentals. We have increased revenue in that facility because we did remodel the kitchen with ARPA funds, so that's doing well. Personnel is pretty much moving the community services manager to a director. We are not requesting any new part-time personnel, so we are at a net body of 0. One of the items that we initially put on there in terms of replacement is the 1-meter dive board. We evaluated that, and staff determined that we can wait another 2 to 3 years to replace that dive board, so it's not necessary this fiscal year. One of the big items, though, is the community center roof repair. Due to the current rainstorms, we received significant damage to the roof. Currently, we are meeting with our insurance company and FEMA as well, and in meeting with those contractors, it's expected to be more than the $95,000. But we hope that the insurance company as well as FEMA are able to cover the majority of costs. So that is just a general number that we received, but we anticipate it being much more, but we don't know when that will occur, but we anticipate this fiscal year. Other than that, that's my budget presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. I'm here to present on the city's Public Works Department. I want to, went too quick. I'm sure you probably want me to go quick, but exactly, I'm going the wrong way.
Next, please.
Thank you. Done. I want to start off by thanking Christy and her team, and Ellie most of all, because we go and ask Ellie everything. But also I want to recognize the managers from Public Works. Ramiro Nunez is here, Tracy Costello, Richard Martinez, and Joe Vieira happens to be out today. But I want to recognize them because they were involved in the budget process previously, but not at the level that they've been involved this year, and I'm very thankful for them. The budget, Public Works is responsible for providing ongoing maintenance and improvement of public infrastructure and rights of way, things like parks, streetlights, sidewalks, streets, traffic signals, city equipment, street trees, parks, open space, and most city facilities. We appreciate community services. Public Works is also responsible for essential city services such as water, sewer, environmental programs, and with the assistance of City Manager's Office, oversight of the refuse contract. The first expenditure summary highlights the programs within the general fund for Public Works. So you'll see city building, parks, streets, and waste and recycling. The major cost drivers across all of these programs really are utilities, electrical, gas, as well as CPI increases under current contracts. Christy mentioned that we had bid out a project or a parks contract for the sports park. It came in 60% higher. We made an estimate that most would range anywhere from 40 to 60% as we went down the rebidding process for contracts that have exceeded the 5-year. Additionally, we have some that are potentially subject to prevailing wage for changes from the DIR that weren't before. So all of those contribute to the cost drivers on this general fund slide. Additionally, waste and recycling, that is where our refuse contract is held, and we anticipate under the contract there's a CPI increase, and that's 5.17, but separately, the lovely unfunded mandate from the state government for organics needs to be implemented. There is some talk that maybe the state will waive it, but so far we haven't heard any confirmation of it, and we need to move forward like it is going to happen. So the waste and recycling contract also includes an estimate for waste management to implement organics, and it's roughly a 10% increase, and that's based on a surrounding city's recent negotiation. We have not received any cost from waste management. Any costs that we do receive would be subject to negotiations and review, as well as City Council approval. But those, we have estimated an increase for that organics implementation within this budget. The next is our non-general fund. So these are restricted funding operations that we have, and we have in here equipment maintenance for our city vehicles and equipment. We have our landscape maintenance districts. We have our sewer and our water enterprises as well. Again, significant cost drivers are related to electrical utilities, gas prices, water costs, treatment costs. All of those things are increasing and are driving our costs up. Separately, we have recently completed a water master plan and a sewer master plan, and that basically outlines the capital improvements that are necessary. Our last rate increase was in 2019, so this budget includes funding for a consultant study to do a cost of service study for both of those programs in order to fully fund the operations as well as the capital. Obviously, all of that gets reviewed and brought back for City Council approval. Another thing that I want to highlight is on the landscape maintenance districts. They haven't really been increased significantly since they began, and so as costs escalate, they have not kept pace. They have required an adjustment from the general fund in order to fund them, and so we will be looking at them in this next fiscal year, as well as bringing back options for the City Council to consider. Our personnel summary does include some changes. So our current FTE, full-time equivalent count, is 51. What we are proposing is a reclassification of an existing position to reflect the duties currently being performed. Then secondarily, we're recommending the increase of a part-time employee to a full-time to help with the administrative work within the department. And then we are also proposing a customer service field representative to help with our water loss programs that are required by the state. And so that would change those. It's a net body change of one additional full-time equivalent person. The last item is our unfunded requests. And the first item is related to the building, the public safety building. As you're aware, that building is certainly too small for the operations that are occurring there, as well as there are some compliance issues, and just it's not, from a regulatory perspective, it's not adequate. So this is funding for us to start looking at options and bringing options back to City Council related to a future public safety building. The next one is the organics. So this is the city side of the organics compliance. We're required to provide food recovery programs. We're required to provide inspections, a lot of things that we have to do. So this is funding in order to do that. We are looking at potentially, this doesn't necessarily have to come from the general fund. It could be funded within our solid waste rates. So as we further our path with waste management and contracts, we'll probably be bringing that as a potential option for City Council. The next one is radar repair signs, or repair of radar signs. We've discussed, just like other departments, we do have some operational savings, and we're going to fund that with this year's operational savings. The next one is just a graffiti blaster for our parks employees so that we can be more responsive to removal of graffiti. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ken, who will do a summary of the budget. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Oh.
Yeah, you get to stay up there and talk
CIP.
CIP.
Thank you very much.
That's okay. So I'm going to go over capital outlay requests and the special programs. And then Meg will do CIP, and then Ken will do a wrap-up. Oh, we have cash. So the departments did review the unfunded capital outlay requests in detail throughout their budget presentations. The total requests right now is $509,000. The capital outlay items, I just would like to mention, those do fluctuate year to year, and it is not part of operations. We are not sure exactly when we need to replace these items, and they are a larger value, so that's why they are not included in our operational items or operational budgets. These are capital outlay requests that are funded. These are non-general fund funds, and this is the list of all of those items. And the total is $1 million for non-general fund. But funded, correct. The special programs consist of federal, state, county, and other, as well as our fiduciary directed programs. These programs do require some oversight from these organizations that provide these funds, and they do have special restrictions. So in 22-23, that was our first year for LA HIDA taking that program on for fiduciary services. And as you can see, it's almost $8 million for those fiduciary services. And LA Impact is $2.4 million for their non-asset forfeiture program. The asset forfeiture program for LA Impact is actually now under the city. As Sam mentioned, we are funding temporarily that $1.5 million, and then it is reimbursed to us. There was a change in the way that that had to be allocated or paid out initially, and I failed to mention that, and so I just wanted to clarify that. So the $1.5 million of expenses does get covered by the $1.5 million of revenues. However, it does skew our budget a little bit, so we do exclude it so that we can have a better comparison from year to year. And now Meg is going to come back up and talk about CIP.
Christy, what's the lag on that? I know we've had some concerns by citizens that we need to be careful with the financing because there's a lag in payment.
It's about a month.
About a month.
Yeah.
But the funds are always there. It just takes the process.
Yes, and we do have we have security in our agreement that they would cover those. Yes.
Thank you. Welcome back.
Good evening again. This time I want to thank all the department directors that submitted requests, but also Cody and Romero, who were primary in helping put this together, as well as Christy Sanchez on our Public Works team. So the CIP, as we discussed at the first budget study session, we had quite a few projects that were underway. Roughly $10 million worth of projects are currently in the approved and funded, and we have new funding requests in this presentation of roughly $13.2 million. So if approved, there would be a total of almost $24 million of projects budgeted, and then the 5-year CIP budget needs reflect about $140 million. These aren't all-inclusive. As we complete master plans and do more planning, we probably will be adding to these numbers. But at this moment in time, about 140 in needs for infrastructure improvements. So this is just a breakdown of the funding sources that provide for the 13.23, and the vast majority, while some of it is very specific, the enterprise funds, they're funded by rates, and so they have to have very specific uses. Water can only be used for water, sewer for sewer, etc. The vast majority of the funding for this year is really related to the transportation funding. And the next slide just gives a breakdown more for the public of where we get our sources and how the program is funded. So now I'll get into the actual projects within the CIP. So the first project is really the sidewalk replacement and rehabilitation. It's one of our annual projects, and this is funded with gas tax, CDBG, as well as Measure M funding, or approximately $237,000, and it moves us towards compliance. The next is the pavement management program, 2.3. And again, this is an annual program. The next street project is a B Street improvement from Bonita to Town that's been identified for $1.2 million. The street banner poles down on D need replacement, and so the $188,000 from gas tax is funded. Grove Neighborhood Street Improvement Project is our next big neighborhood project, and at the last May meeting we approved SB1s for use for there. The ADA transition plan will be utilizing CDBG funding to identify what are our future needs to get us fully into compliance. City Hall ADA compliance. This is the customer service counter and the upgrades that'll help enhance. The mesh network update. This is to help in communications. Chief talked about some traffic cameras. We also have some traffic communication equipment that needs to talk to each other. And so this will help fund that project and bring it to fruition. The pedestrian bridge, Eric mentioned that we had completed design. Now, while it'd be great if the bridge only cost $1 million, you can see in the later CIP spreadsheet it's significantly more than that. It's upwards of $22 million, I believe. That is today. That's so. Hopefully, we will get some earmarks and some other funding opportunities. The next one is White Avenue from Foothill to Bonita and Town Center from Foothill to White. Then we have traffic studies through ATC and others. Other people's requests, resident requests, we get asked to look at crosswalks and can we change this? And so this will give us a mechanism to do that and lead to capital projects. The Stormwater Master Plan, again, this will help us identify where should we be spending Measure W dollars? Where does it make the most sense? Full trash capture devices are, again, a stormwater compliance mechanism funded by Measure W. The facilities painting was a previous ARPA identification. We used a portion of it for the painting that will occur through the customer service improvements. City yard re-roof and fire sprinkler system also was an ARPA identified project, but because of the fire sprinkler being in the water yard, it's a little more costly than the $25,000 from ARPA, so we've added some water funding to help with that project. The next is the city yard fleet roll-up doors that require replacement, also funded with ARPA. City yard asphalt replacement, ARPA funds of $380,000. City yard swamp coolers were also an ARPA identified object, so $25,000. The next is the Wilderness Park. This is a placeholder for the oak tree potential mitigation that may be required by the Fish and Wildlife Department for us to clear, do the appropriate fire clearance behind homes. We're under discussions with them on that topic. The next is a financial system upgrade, which is basically was identified in ARPA but needed additional funding. So we've identified water as well as sewer capital to help fund that project. All right, there we go. The next is the mobility project, again through ATC. There are sometimes identified bike lane improvements that could be made. This gives us an opportunity to have some funding to do that. The next is also the aquatic center pool replastering. As you're aware, we had previously identified funding. We do not believe it's adequate. It's a shared expense with other with both Bonita and University of Laverne, but it will need additional funding from us. Las Flores Park South restrooms also needs additional funding for completion. And then water system rehabilitation. This is a placeholder for future water capital projects doing the initial design work. There's a need for improvements at the Amherst treatment plant, funded with the water capital funding of $540,000. AMI meter conversion project, which basically gets us automated meter reading and enables customer access to their information. This is a potential placeholder for a grant and an earmark that we've asked for and are underway. We're hopeful that we will be able to get it. And the final project is sewer system rehabilitation. Again, it's a placeholder for design of future projects. And that brings the total to $13.2 million.
The Amherst treatment plant, that's on tonight's agenda, that piece.
That is right? For resin replacement, which is different than this is a future vessel upgrade.
Thank you for clarifying that.
And you'll see one more Amherst treatment plant, which is next time, which is the fractal plates, which are related also to the treatment vessels. And with that,
thank you very much.
We'll turn it over to Ken. I wanted to mention the last few slides. This is just a new sorry, I'm supposed to talk into the microphone. This is just a new way to present the CIP, the 5-year CIP, because this includes previously funded projects as well as future funding for projects and future needs for projects. So it identifies 5 years out. We've also organized it by facilities and parks so that if you're looking for something, hopefully it's easier for you and or the public to find. So
the piece that is for the appropriation amount, that is already accounted for and to be doing this next year?
The 13.2, it'd be the second column, the proposed funding request, and it's bolded.
The page before this.
Oh, I apologize.
Page before that.
Oh, I'm doing it
Go
again.
backwards. The green area looks like that's for this next year.
So these are, the first one are the annual projects. The second is the fully funded budgeted project, so it doesn't need additional appropriations. The blue are the Las Flores Park restroom, as well as the others that are currently budgeted but need additional funding. And then the next are new projects in the pink.
The stormwater capture of trash,
Yes.
is that at
It-
our street level, or is that a part of a county project through the storm drains? Or
It's
flood
for
control
the
account?
it's for the catch basins to put the metal enclosures on them, but it's our project on our storm drains.
But these are our street storm drains?
Yes.
The curb cutouts, okay. Let's see, the park on, Wilderness Park, that's not the one on Golden Hills, correct? Or is that the Golden Hills Park?
So it's behind Monterey.
Yeah.
It's the
Okay.
yes. So it's in that general vicinity.
Not our open space.
Well, it's
project.
It's
yeah,
part of
it-
that.
Yeah, it's not Golden Hills, the Wilderness Park that's on the, call it south side of Golden Hills.
It's the
It's
north.
behind Monterey. That was purchased 6, 7, 8 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. Part of the wilderness plan. Yes, the gift that keeps on giving.
What's the one on Golden Hills called?
Wilderness Park.
We gotta make a change. We can't have the park, two parks with the same name.
The Steve Johnson Wilderness Park.
No, not even attach him to that. No.
We could get it done in a half a day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, staff, you've heard from the council after this quick recap. If there's any further questions of the department. We are proposing, as is right now, a balanced budget. Coming back to you on June 19th, that will be a balanced budget given the direction that you provide based on the discussions of using the available revenue, the Measure LV funds, and then the prioritization that we hear from you about some of the projects that were discussed from each of the departments. So there is approximately $232,000 available over what has been currently funded. Though there are a couple things within the budget that you could always tell us, let's do something different, or what's that? We do have 2 weeks to prepare that for you. There are a lot of unfunded operational and a lot of unfunded capital outlay. That is just a little shy of $1 million, about $976,000. It has been a dynamic process, and I even think that the further we look and the more information we get, there's always little changes. That's why you need some cushion in a budget, not a lot, but, if our revenues, if it's $1, then I always say that, let's spend 95 cents of it and keep 5 cents just in case something happens. I do want to thank Christy and her staff and then all the department directors for working on everything and laboring well and above beyond normal hours. And then Meg and Tracy and Christy and her staff for kind of redoing the capital improvement program. You see there's a new format, and I know they kind of tore out and tore up what was done beforehand just to make it a little bit more sensible and understandable as we go forward. And I think you'll see benefit. Talking to Christy, I really look forward to next year's budget. I think it's going to be a lot easier to put together. And, the saying of you can't build upon a shaky foundation clearly was some of the problems we had at this point, but I think we're much better off going into next year based on some of your direction and what we'll bring back to you on the 19th. So at this time, if there's any further questions and questions to staff or to Christy, we're open to answer them.
I just want to first thank all the staff and Christy's department because we're getting in a purview, although it's been a little frustrating because as we've been going along, we've found, I guess you say a chink in the armor where there's things weren't in the right place, and we're kind of bringing everything together and organizing again, which really helps us to see where we're at. And this is a really good picture of where we're at. It's just now figure out where we're going to pull this $976,000 from. My real question was, and I've been talking to City Manager Domer regarding that, is what have we not put as far as ARPA funds? What has not been allocated? Because we've got a lot of these that are measure funds from different tax measures that we have, but I know that we had what has not been allocated for ARPA funds.
So all ARPA funds have been committed. However, that doesn't mean they couldn't have a change in the commitment. So currently there are $5 million of unspent committed funds. However, Meg did mention quite a few projects this year that we are funding. So there are $1.9 million of general capital items that are uncommitted, $1.5 million of water capital items that are uncommitted, almost $1 million of outdoor recreation items that are, committed but unspent, and then $470,000 of housing rehab that are unspent. However, we do have applications, and we're currently going through those. And then $189,000 of unspent homeless outreach. So we do have funds that could be shifted to a different purpose if that was something that you wanted to do.
Well, I think my concern is the fact that a lot of those things are very important, and we probably need to keep them in place. But as far as the capital outlay for public works on some of the water issues and things like that, and remember, these are one-time funds that we're never going to see again.
Correct.
We just won't. I mean, it's God help us if it happens again, because I don't know what's going to happen to our whole economy to begin
Right.
with. But I mean, if we really look back and say, I know we got $232,000 that we have already currently we could use, but you've got some of those ones that then I would probably go back to Public Works Director and say, where are the ones we can take some out, still put money in there, but pull some out in order to fund. A lot of these are important. These are small things, but for the departments are big, and I think that's important. We need to look at that. So, I mean, the ARPA funds are there, and now they know that we can take those ARPA funds and move them around now. It doesn't matter. They don't care really, in essence, what they're spent for. They're a general fund now.
Correct.
So, I mean, I think that would probably be our focus, because a lot of these, like I say, these are, to me, that looks like they're very important. To the staff has put a lot of time in this. They've taken things off, things they didn't need, to look and reorganize their budgets in each department. So, I mean, the ARPA funds are a one-time deal, although I don't want to sacrifice that for some of the departments, like for our parks and stuff, for our all-inclusive parks and our equipment. Things like that are extremely important to our residents. We want to make sure our residents get taken care of. And also in the funds with water and things like that, that we don't want to mess those up either, because we're going to have to pay for that eventually, and it's got to come from somewhere. And, you can ask for all the grant money you want, but that doesn't mean you're going to get it all either. So that was just my kind of look at that, and maybe come back and say, hey, what can you do without? I mean, we got this right here. We can use some of the, LV funds. We've got the other funds there, and then kind of see where we go from there. I think that would be my suggestion, but I'd let my counsel speak. But anyway, Mr. Crosby.
I have comments later on, but questions. And you talked about, Mr. Mayor, about, Chrissy, you cleaned up a lot of where things were in one place and not in the other. But one thing, and first of all, thank you so much for giving me time. She came in on Friday and took her lunchtime, and we didn't even eat, and she spent going over with me, so I really appreciate that. But one thing talked about, too, is in our community services, we have a under their budget to replace the roof, but all the rest of our departments, the buildings, it comes out of Public Works. And so I think coming out of, it might be shifting of one thing over to another, but if it's a building, it should be coming out of Public Works, not out of our community services budget, because I don't want it to be seen that we're taking money away from youth programs or food service to the seniors, or using those kind of funds to replace the roof, when it should be coming out of our building funds. So, but the other point is, I know we said we reduced it to the 976,000, but that number still does not include the question about the 3 extra firemen of 412,000. Correct?
Correct. It does not.
So that number should really be almost $1.4 million.
Correct.
I appreciate everything that staff has done, all the department heads and Christy, getting this put together. As far as which programs should have additional funding, I'd like to see a lot of this reserved for not necessarily dedicating those funds tonight, but have funds available throughout the year that we can fund requests. But I'm not sure if that's the direction that staff is looking for at this point. That's what I have.
Mr. Kashabaki.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and staff. Excuse my tardiness. One thing I just had a question on was there was a decrease in safety equipment. I'm a big proponent of safety. So what safety equipment do we have a decrease in? Was it something that we're not going to buy, something that we're not going to do without, or is it just we don't need it? If we can, it's later. That's kind of the question I had about that. And what's a water plateau summit? I'm sorry, I'm not an engineer. But what's a water plateau summit on
That's
this budget?
okay. I'm not an engineer either, but Meg can definitely answer that.
Hey, hi.
It's a water
Hi.
line.
Sorry. Hope you
It's a
get better.
It's a water line that's very high up a hill
Yeah.
in a very restricted easement, and we're
Okay.
on the erosion side. And it actually needs replacement, but we need to find an alternate route. So it's basically a replacement of a major transmission line for the city.
Oh, where's that? Do we know?
It's right above Leroy Boy's home.
On that side, okay.
Yes.
That's also how she injured her thumb, because she was up there the other day and then
Hiking up there?
Yes,
Isn't that area considered a county property?
but it's our transmission line.
But it's ours.
Yeah, we have an easement.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you, Mayor. You're the best. Ever.
With that, closing comments?
Yes, thank you. And Cash, on that water to the summit, I remember when Dan Keesley was going out and said, don't forget to replace this, because if it goes out, it's going to cost you a lot more money to replace it before, if it's already, yes. So that was always been back in my head every time. And every time a new Public Works come, I always ask them that question, because they keep coming there. My thoughts on the budget and looking at the unfunded stuff. We had a leftover last year, about $87,000 that was unbudgeted, but during our year we spent over $615,000 in adjustments. Now we have about $107,000 of excess reserves, but we're asking to look at $1.4 million. I'm with Councilmember Johnson of really looking at our reserves. Well, it seems to be that we're spending our general fund almost is like our checking account, but we want to spend every dollar of that when we need to make sure that we put in our reserves, and we need to make sure that we're increasing our savings account. We also got a note that is brought up a couple times too. Last year we had a lot more, the $650,000 where we were adding employees, and a lot of them were for fire because of the analysis that we had on fire, and we needed to increase it. I'm not saying anything negative about that. We need to increase it. But this next year we're going to have our police analysis come up, and when those analyses come up, personnel always comes about that too. So spending a lot now, when we know this before this analysis comes, we need to be very conservative in our spending. So that's, and when I came on the council, we had about 29% reserve, and right now we have about 25 to 26. We needed to spend it because when on a rainy day, and it was raining pretty hard, and we needed to make sure and do that. But now we're at the point again where we need to look back and start saving again and making sure that we have appropriate funds for the next rainy day to come. So I'm really looking to look at that, those unfunded, and with that $107,000, really looking to try to save that.
Councilmember Johnson.
Yeah, Mr. Crosby, I too think we should be saving some of that money we may, throughout the year, need to spend all of it, but I think it's important to have a reserve, and that I don't really have anything additional to add to that.
Councilmember Cash.
Well, saving money is obviously really important, but with this day and age and the increase in crime and the increase in homelessness and issues that we've had that I've seen actually over this weekend, that's going to, what I believe is going to have an impact in our community. I'd like to continue to focus additional money spent on our public safety, police, fire, and definitely public works. You know, when you come and look in the city of Laverne, you see the clean, you know, thank you, public works, and also thank you to the police and fire. Just coming in here, I saw 4 units dealing with an issue right there on Wheeler and Foothill. Now, these are all just some of the things that are going to be increased, so I'd like to at least have, I understand the need to save money, but I also understand the need for continued public safety. And with the increase in crime that we have, our community safety is the most paramount to me. So if we can have a good, delicate balance there, I'm all with it. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Cash. Again, I want to thank all the departments. I want to thank our city management. I want to thank our assistant city manager. But you guys have done a great job. It's just, as always, a budget is a budget. And unfortunately, quite sometimes never quite goes the way you really want it to, because as everybody knows right now, construction costs have increased, our labor costs increase, our basically our medical costs have increased, just like my business. It's nonstop, so we have to be ahead of the edge. I do agree in being conservative. I do agree to have a reserve kitty that we do have to put into. You don't want to keep taking out of it. I do agree with that. I would like to look at the ARPA funds and see if there's a modification we can do to that to see if we could fund these, because once they're gone forever, and we should utilize that. And I don't want to take it away from any of the things we've already put in place. Our homeowners assistance grants are finally starting to move along. It's taken a long time, and I commend Candace Bocock for that. That was tough, and Director Scheer. It was not an easy task, not as easy as the business assistance grants. That was $700,000+ that flew out the window. Like it was amazing how it flew out, and it was a testament to our University of Laverne and also to Leah from our chamber. But I think all our departments are really looking at it closely. Everybody's working well together. I can see it. Everybody's communicating. And that's the most important thing about a budget, is the fact that, yes, we're going to have to increase personnel. Our city is the needs. We have a homeless population, and I commend our Community Services Director, Yvonne Duran, for doing that. She's got a great affiliation with Tri-City Mental Health, LACADA, with our San Gabriel Valley Council of Governments, along with our police department, and all of our departments work really well together. So with that, everyone's done a great job, and I'm glad they're communicating. I appreciate Mr. Domer also for putting everybody together and making sure that everybody's got a fluid communication level here, that no more of these hidden secrets. It's like, let's just see where we're at. Let's just really move forward and make this thing work and do the best we can, and look for higher electeds for more money too, if we can get them to front us some bucks. With that, what do you need from us, Mr. Domer?
No, I think we have enough. We've heard your comments and your direction. On the 19th, we'll bring you back. We're going to be looking at the ARPA, and we'll do a little bit more deeper digging on that. Yeah, because I do agree that's one-time only funds, but I think based on what some of the allocations, the commitments have been, that we can look at that for some of the needs that are out there. And I do agree on the having the funding throughout the year, even though funding does come up and some things, we have vacancies and we can, save some money there and move some money over. But we also have certainly a lot of need that comes up. Technology and the security improvements are critical. And then we'll get some efficiencies using technology and better practices. But, I believe we have enough to bring back something to you on the 19th.
That's something I didn't mention. I think our technology and our basically our firewall technology, I know we've done some changes already, but I think it's extremely important that we have probably the best we could possibly get. And our battery backup systems are important to keep it in place. The generator out here and the generator at the public safety building, only good for so much. I think it's really important that we do that, so I appreciate that part. It's important to keep our systems safe and not being hacked, as some of the cities have. So, okay, then you don't need a motion from us, or is it a minute motion, or nothing? We're all again, good. Staff, thank you very much. Really appreciate you guys doing a great job, and I'm glad that we're all working together, and I'm glad that we're finally ahead of this one, because for a while there it was pretty tough. But Christy, your staff, enough of the overtime. Okay, please. Enough of the overtime, please. We're almost there, right, Christy? Oh, thank you. Okay. Whatever you need. Okay, with that, we are going to adjourn this meeting and recess. We're going to recess this meeting. No, we're going to adjourn this meeting, and we're going to start our city council meeting at 6:30 p.m. Same night, right here, same council chambers. Thank you, everybody.
No public comment.
Oh, wait.
Thanks, Rick. You
We
got a
need to
room
do-
full of people.
Rick, I'm sorry. We are not adjourned. We are opening public comments. Sorry. No, take that back. Pull it back. Does anybody wish to speak on a public comment? If you do, if you would just state your name and your address, you don't need to fill out a card right now if you don't have one. Please, come on up. Jennifer Simison.
Jennifer Simison, 1977 Golden Hills Road. So I am one of the citizen people on the Measure LV committee, and we met in April about the budgets, and there were higher requests. And when we had the requests this time, it's a new program, and we're all learning how to do it. And what we found out is the year before, all the things that were requested to be paid by the measure, we found it in the future from our new city manager that those could have been covered by other funds. So then we were really very nervous and skeptical about what are we approving in the second tier. We're mostly about the second tier. And two things on the second tier. We really want to use second tier money to make the community feel safe. So the biggest thing when we're getting all these requests, we never feel like the requests have been like any community input on what the requests should be. They all go to the departments and what they need. So we thought maybe a roundtable with the community to understand Measure LV. Yeah, that maybe sometime that we meet with department people and talk about the things. And then number two, we limited it to the 125, but there was like 250,000 that was, that would fit under our measure. And we were okay with that as long as you guys look at it. We were not limiting it to that much, but we were like, a lot of it were the chairs, and we're like tech and technology and stuff, and we're like, what? This is part of Measure M? But as we met with the meeting and you realized without the administrative staff helping the departments, that is safety too, if we didn't have them. So we were giving the opportunity for you, because we didn't have as much information as we got tonight. So there is a squeak of money in there, but I think if in the future we could get a roundtable or something so we can be a community in this, and where we all feel like we're actually the money we voted for, that gets the extra things besides wages and payrolls and stuff like that. Okay?
Thank you, Ms. Simison.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Public comment? Ms. Gabaldon.
Cynthia Gabaldon, 2529. I actually have a specific questions because I'm trying to validate what was presented today versus what was already online, because some of the numbers are not the same. So my first question is, other than that though, the mid-year transfer was paid for by what? Was that one-time ARPA money or something else? And then what is actually our total budget? Because on 3 slides, on everything I found online, including the main budget, and tonight, it says 102.4 million. Then I've seen 81.9 million, and then today, the last slide says 47.5 million. And it makes a very big difference on those numbers. So I really want to know, what is our total budget number? And the reason why I ask is that there's something called, for everybody that knows out there, there's actually something called the unrestricted net position, and when you divide that number by the population, it ranks our cities on their fiscal stability. And right now, using the 81.9 million, we're number 52 of all of LA County. Anything under 36, you're in trouble. So, or higher than 36, you're in trouble. So right now, locally, the only city that's doing okay is San Dimas. The other thing I was interested in, if we're using 81.9 million, we're a population of 30,380 people. Covina is 49,000, and their budget is 114 million. Claremont's budget population is 37,000, and they're at 56.5 million. But they're almost bankrupt, just so you guys know. They're at number 61 in the rankings in the county. They're in bad shape. San Dimas has a population of 34,000, almost 35,000, closest to us, and they're at 93 million. And then Glendora's at 52,005, and they're at 105 million. San Dimas is the only one that's above that line. So I been trying to figure out these numbers, but there are 3 numbers floating around now, and that's very important in the way that this is actually presented. So, thank you. And those total numbers are very, very important in the long run, because Measure LV is gone by, according to the projection from your guys' numbers, 2829. So, and that's from the previous presentation, so that's not going to be around forever, and increasing taxes is a no-go. And I really hope everybody realizes that now. And from the work that I do, I know about 5 very, very large companies, great big home builders, they let go of half their staff in the past 4 months. It's coming. The recession is coming. So would love to know those budget numbers. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Gabaldon. Anyone else? Mr. Bowen.
Mr. Mayor, Council, I'll make this brief because there's no time left, but I went on the city website and it said that the budget for 2019-20 was $55 million and change. The next year, 2021, was 59, about the same amount. 21/22 showed 64 million, so that was only up $5 million. Last year, it shows 22-23, pardon me, was 81.9 million, so that jumped about $17 million. And this year, it's proposed right here. Well, I thought we were going to talk about the whole thing tonight. It says 23-24 proposed 102.7 million, which is a jump of $20 million in 1 year. So my question is, where's the money coming from? We talked about 47.5 in the general fund, but the total budget looks like it's going up almost 25%. So I would love to have some explanation, of which I thought we were going to get tonight. Where's the $20 million increase in our total budget? Maybe we can have another session. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowen. Anyone else wish to speak? Ms. Beauchamp.
Danita Beauchamp, 2516 Amherst Street. Firstly, in JR's presentation on the PowerPoint, those little columns that were on the side that were like the key points of the line items that were presented, I noticed that, and he did touch on it, discussing the election for March of 2024 in District 2 and the costs associated with that. But within that column, it also stated at-large mayor. So what are the specifics of the cost of that? Is that the investigation that's going to be conducted to determine whether or not the city can go to redistrict and go back to an at-large mayor? Is that something that's going to be proposed on the March ballot? There needs to be a little bit more specificity on that particular line item. The other issue that I would like to see, Christy discussed the open position for a senior accountant. Why not have one of the existing accounting clerks or whatever their titles are be promoted, and it would be much easier to find somebody at the lower level of an accounting position, especially since they already work for the city. They would be familiar with the numbers and the operations of the city. I think it would be a lot less of a learning curve rather than hire somebody from away from the city and have to learn everything and have a longer training period. In the police department section, Acting Chief Gonzalez discussed the SWAT rifles that are over 20 years old. If I'm not mistaken, I believe that there was a meeting not too long ago that discussed money that would be allocated because they had to meet the regulations of the state. And there was budgetary numbers discussed at that meeting, and so why wasn't the SWAT rifles considered during that time? Why is this now considered like a new line item? So those are my questions and concerns for the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Beauchamp. Anyone else wish to speak? With that, we'll close Public Works. Can we answer a number of those?
Yeah, Christy, you want to come up and talk about the budget numbers?
Did I say Public Works?
Yeah. Public comments.
It was you. You did it. You started it.
Yes, so the $47 million budget amount is the general fund, and the $102 million is all funds. The reason that the budget does fluctuate, and Mr. Bowen is correct, it does fluctuate. From 1920 through 23-24, there have been changes. We have added the fiduciary, which alone this year is almost $8 million, and that adds to our budget. In addition, capital outlay items vary. So this year, I believe it's $13 million. Last year, I don't know what the amount is, but it fluctuates. So that budget amount is going to change. I think the more important number to look at as far as, you know, the change would be the general fund budget specifically, and how did that change, as those other figures do vary based on need, based on projects, and again, the fiduciary did add, with LA Impact, almost $10 million between those two. As far as Mrs. Gabaldon's comment for the unrestricted net position and comparing San Dimas. San Dimas specifically is a contract city. They have no public safety at all, as far as they don't have their own police and fire. So they are going to have different metrics than a city that has both police and fire. Similar, Glendora has police but do not have fire, and Claremont has police but no fire. So it is hard to compare, and I know that the state puts out a report annually on the health of a city. I did do a review on that for council, which I'm happy to share with you to explain how we're getting our grade, and so I'd be happy to share that. And as far as promoting staff, that is definitely something that we would be happy to do. And our staff is very new, so we have one person who came on in December and another that was promoted who was a account clerk, and she was promoted to an accountant in July, I believe. So we do definitely look at promotions, and if it's something that we can do, we would definitely support that, as I'm very grateful for staff and I would like to see them developed. I think I covered everything. Also, I'm available for questions, so if you have questions about the budget, please send me an email. And in addition, there are quite a few reports, and the numbers are still changing. So until we have that final budget on June 19th to bring back to council, there is a possibility that those numbers are going to change. In the budget documents, in the summary pages, which are in the beginning of the budget, there is a fund balance as well as a transfer balance summary page, which has all of the different funds. So you can see the different funds in addition to the general fund for the totals.
And Mr. Mayor, on the question about the elections, so we will be bringing you back with the city attorney the documents necessary, because there was a discussion and direction provided by council on a 3-2 vote for asking the question of whether the city wants to go back to a directly elected mayor. The difference in those costs were if that occurs, and so there is going to be an election or the question asked, a measure placed on the ballot to the residents that would increase what would normally be an $80,000 election cycle to $200,000. And that would be the 2 districts that are up for election, and then the citywide election, or the question of whether to go back to a directly elected mayor.
On the ballot. It would be on the ballot.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah. So it would be a ballot measure saying, do you want this or do you not want
correct,
this?
yeah. And so
proceed forward.
Correct. So, yeah, and so the cost would be, if we just did the 2 districts that are going to be up for election, it would be $80,000. If we did the 2 districts plus that question, which then is every single district, that would be the larger amount, the $200,000. So we are going to bring that back think we're scheduled looking at August. There's a certain time frame before the March election, but that answers that question as to why those two different amounts.
Also, Ms. Simonson had asked, and I think that's a very good suggestion, roundtable with it, regarding Measure LB, because it's always been kind of a unknown, but it's not going to be anymore. So I think that's very good. We need a recommendation from the committee, but we also need to discuss that at council level along with that committee. So I think that's great idea. Thank you.
I'd like to address the comment made by Ms. Beauchamp.
Yes.
On the police rifles. I believe she was referring to the report that we had done, the annual report for Assembly Bill 481. In the conclusion of that report, we did note that there will be additional equipment requested for this fiscal year, but there was no funding set aside for that. It was simply an advisal that we would be coming back and asking that for that equipment.
Okay.
But no
Thank
funding.
You, Chief. Thank you, Chief.
Yep.
I think we're good with that. Yeah, we're going to take a short break. We're going to adjourn this meeting at 6:34 p.m. again.